Gavin Comiskey's piece with Gordon Darcy in the Irish Times today is very good. Is Ireland's system dependent on one person? Is it dependent on one person? Darcy doesn't answer the question. We'll get into some more detail on this in a couple of minutes' time, but I mean, there's kind of a sense that yes, it is. Yes, it's entirely dependent on Joe Schmidt. There's also an interview with Conor O'Shea, and then a load of stuff around the football from last night and the future of the international rules. There might be a possibility of an Ireland-Australia test in New York. The Examiner this morning is a picture of the ticket from the day that the All Blacks were beaten by Munster. Did Munster beat the All Blacks in the game? I never heard anything about that. They never mention it.
No, I don't think that happened. I think that's fake.
1978, 40 years on from the making of Munster Rugby, Donal Lennon relives the magic and challenges the myths of 1978, and that's a picture of it's signed by a bunch of the players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 of the players anyway have signed it. And then Trick or Treat, there's a different one there. McGrath Furlong Bring Lines Experience Wires from there's a changed and updated version. Trick or Treat, Hanson's Irish trick fears may come true as Murray could face the All Blacks. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes' time as well, because it's on the back of the Irish Independent this morning as well. Ireland not ruling Murray out of clash with All Blacks. This is the notion that perhaps, maybe, Conor Murray could make his return for Ireland on the 17th of November against the All Blacks and not play a minute of rugby beforehand. FAI and IFA set to co-host European Under-21 Championship is the headline in Dan McDonald's piece, or at least they're going to bid for it anyway. They're trying to bring the Under-21 European Championships to the island in 2021 or 2023 as a precursor to the 5 nations hosting the World Cup proper in 2030, which, I mean, let's face it, why shouldn't we try and host a World Cup? Brexit might be a bit of an issue. Free passage of players, people through. Maybe that'll be the end of the Brexit nightmare, will be the flowering, a new stage in international relations between these islands when we host the World Cup in 2030. It is
Co-hosting with the Scots and the Welsh.
And England.
And England, so 4 teams automatically qualifying for the
5.
World Cup.
Northern Ireland.
It's
well, it's like a 60-team World Cup.
Who knows, by then there may be one Ireland.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
Anything could happen over the next
Northern Ireland, will it?
10 to 15 years, possibly, yeah. I don't know, let's not go down the whole, we should be hosting the World Cup.
Back page of the Irish... Sorry, Dave. It's the same story, basically, on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Joining forces reads the headline. FAI and IFA to unite in bid to host Under-21 Euros. And Chicago hope Carbery ready to seize chance at Soldier Field. Back page of the Standard this morning is going with an exclusive on Declan Rice. No more Mr. Rice guy, they say. Declan's set to choose England. Some interesting stuff on that, which we'll get to in just a moment. While the back page of the Sun says, double your dosh, Poch. Real in £17 million a year bid to lure Spurs boss. And an upper deck setback, says the Sun here, that as Ireland continue to wait on whether they get a second chance with Declan Rice, the player is glad to have taken his at West Ham this season. So he's in positive form, but it seems that he's going to be in even more positive form after he chooses England in the next couple of weeks, because Gareth Southgate has met with him and presented him with a range of statistics showing why he could be an integral part of England in the coming years. Back page of the Mirror then is threats stun Zaha. So Wilfred Zaha yesterday on Instagram posted, for all the people taking it one step further and being racist and wishing death on my family, I wish your family is the best too. P.S. My life is still very good despite your hate, with a little champagne emoji. He was racially abused online after that Arsenal match at the weekend, where made the most of a penalty, but it was a penalty. Even Granit Xhaka said after the game it was a penalty. So pretty disgusting behaviour from what I can only assume are Arsenal fans targeting Wilfred Zaha online. Front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is Jones rolls the dice. Brown dropped for the first time. Ashton set to end 4-year exile, and Itoje in line for back row switch. So big news coming from Eddie Jones and the England camp ahead of the November internationals. And then they go with that story as well on the back page of The Guardian. But the picture here is, I was frustrated. It dragged me down. Thomas reveals tensions with Team Sky over Froome. Donald McRae has spoken to him. His new book is out. There's some interesting quotes in it, and we'll get to that very shortly.
Yeah, okay, we've got the UK back pages here. It's a bunch of them. W. Dosh Poch is the same one. Zaha got death threats, is the same. Also, obviously, England dropped Brown from Test squad. It's funny how dropping Brown is such a big story for English rugby, and yet it felt like it had been coming for a while, right?
Yeah, well, he was forced to come out and defend him in the Six Nations earlier this year, wasn't he, when people were questioning whether he should be playing. And then when he did turn out a really good performance, he went after the press again, saying, "Oh, you've all changed your tune, haven't you, now that you asked me to leave him out? Now you're telling me how great a player he is. You guys don't know what you're talking about." Typical Eddie Jones style, exactly. But Mike Brown, look, he's definitely in the twilight of his career. He's 33 now. He's played 72 times for England. He's definitely not the player he was when he was the standout fullback in Europe 4 or 5 years ago, when the Queens were going really well under Conor O'Shea. And they do have better options. They have quicker options, and he isn't as durable as he once was either. He has shipped a few knocks, head knocks, picked up a few injuries along the way. Chris Ashton has been brilliant for him. And Eddie Jones isn't the kind of coach that's going to worry about some of the other antics you get when you pick Chris Ashton.
No, he's going to encourage them. Yeah. If this goes tits up for England in this window, there's a good chance he gets fired. It's at that stage, right? Like,
I don't know what I would give percentage-wise of the chances of him not being the England head coach by Christmas, but like a disastrous November window, how risky is it changing your head coach?
How risky is it?
Final 12 months before a World Cup.
How risky is it not changing?
What are the alternatives? Who are the possibles when it comes to replacing Eddie Jones? The pressure that would be on the new guy coming in then, I don't know. But the slide has been inexorable. It's been incredible to watch where they are now in comparison to where they were 12 months after he took the job, when all we wanted was an England All Blacks meeting. We haven't got that until this month. And now that they have it, and now that it's the kind of matchup everybody wants to see outside of Ireland, New Zealand, they might be regretting actually putting that fixture on the fixture list by the end of it, because there's a chance New Zealand will hammer them.
And there's a good chance that the Springboks will hammer them as well, because they've got a good coach who's picking their best players and the best players available to them, and they've got a clear identity again. Going to do the Irish news, and then there's one final story from the papers here. Tiered championship could work if done right. McGrath, All-Ireland winner, back at home club, Ross Trevor. So people are waking up to the whole prospect that maybe the football championship isn't fit for purpose at inter-county level. We're going to talk about football generally in a moment with Casey O'Brien, the manager of St. Pat's in Wicklow. First though, one last story from you. Yeah,
it's interesting you mention that. Actually, Paul Products across some of the newspapers as well this morning, saying that a second tier wouldn't work at all. But back page of the Times Ireland edition this morning is injury could rule Carney out of tests, and that Ireland story again. They're set to launch a bid to host the under-21 finals with the North. That's going to be announced tomorrow, we suspect.
Yeah, and obviously it's the two chief executives of the FAs, the IFA and the FAI, are making that joint announcement. So you would suspect they've done their back channeling across the corridors of power in European football, and they're not coming tomorrow to go, oh, we've got like a 30% chance of winning this. Yeah,
a lot of the talking would have been done at this stage. A lot of the diplomacy would have been worked through at this stage. I think it would be great. I think we've already shown with the Women's World Cup, for example, in the rugby, that we do take to these kind of tournaments, even if they are a lot smaller in scale than, say, the big deals like a Rugby World Cup or a Football World Cup or Olympic Games, which is, as we know, touted not so long ago. But it would be a great way to get our 21s into a major tournament.
There's one other story that's coming out this morning, and that is the news that Sky and BT have agreed a deal. So Sky will be the official exclusive carrier of BT Sport. So if you want to get BT Sport from next summer on, you're going to have to use the Sky platform. This follows on the back of a deal in the UK. BT has also agreed to act as a billing agent and to sell Now TV on Sky's behalf. So there's obviously loads of stuff going on where they're cross-pollinating each other. Sky recently announced you can get Netflix on their platform, so you don't have to switch from... You stay in their walled garden, you still continue to use Netflix and YouTube.
Don't have to get the phone out.
Yeah, so obviously it's part of the Air bundle at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
And this was something they confirmed in the UK last year, and I just wonder what it means when it comes to the battlegrounds for Premier League rights in the years to come. Is there some cooperation going on here, some coordination of bids, or are they putting up a Chinese wall of some description when it comes to buying rights for both rugby and football and keeping that completely separate to this sort of an arrangement.
Well, that's true. It's actually interesting to say that, because is this going in the opposite direction, if you take your logic one step further, of what we thought at the start of the season, where you'd have like 6 or 7 different platforms, whereas now it's kind of going back to maybe more of a monopoly, which, you know, monopolies are never good things, but given like the advent of 11 Sports and all that sort of stuff, I'm starting to think actually paying just for one subscription isn't that necessarily a bad thing. But obviously you're going to have Amazon in the frame for the next Premier League's right deal.
Yeah, or not. Maybe Amazon decided that they like had dipped their toes in the water and it's too competitive and they don't want it, and they're not selling you broadband. Like, so it's not quite the loss maker reason to get people hooked in that Amazon, unless Amazon start giving you broadband too. Who knows? Anyway, that was a bit of a diversion. We'll get back to that a little bit later on when some more details emerge about whether or not you're actually going to have to pay, or if it comes as part of a standard package, or what you get. So let's move on. We'll bring you the AM breakfast menu this morning. We've got lots to talk about. 6 points for you. Doping in rugby. It's actually South African rugby. Geraint Thomas versus Chris Froome. Maybe the lid has been lifted on one of the most explosive. Is it? Who cares? I don't know. It's hard to care about the the Sky Boys fighting each other. But anyway, we'll try. Owen's going to make you salivate about that one. The second tier and whether or not it could work in a football championship. We need to move away. The branding of this is already bad when you're calling it second tier. Joe Schmidt's next move, and we're going to start with Declan Rice. The tab of the morning to you?
Yeah, no more Mr. Rice, guys. Really good. The Star obviously being kind of leading the way in this story. Paul Lennon's had previously said that Declan Rice was still very much available, still very much up for grabs a couple of weeks ago, which he kind of points out in his piece. It's a joint byline with Ian Murta in the Irish Daily Star. They say it's an exclusive, which it is. There is a Rice story in the Sun this morning, but it's just about his club form. But in terms of the Irish stuff, he's expected to confirm his switch of allegiance after the games against Northern Ireland and Denmark. So he was invited to St George's Park earlier this month, Declan Rice was, and at his second meeting that was with Southgate in 5 months, Rice was presented with a range of statistical data showing how he could fit into the England setup. So Gareth Southgate came prepared to his meeting with Declan Rice. He said the teenager was assured that if he did commit to England, he would become a key member of the squad once his FIFA international transfer had been completed. Now, Martin O'Neill had obviously also spoken to Declan Rice, but he's been speaking to him as recently as the past fortnight, and it's believed that he did not commit to a return to the Ireland squad after that conversation. And last night, an FAI spokesman stated that there has been no approach by Rice or the FA to the FAI to start the lengthy international transfer process, but it seems that it's a matter of if rather than when that's going to happen.
When rather than if that's going to happen?
Yes, that's what I meant.
How lengthy is the lengthy process? Months? Not like 2 years, right?
Months, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not that lengthy.
No, he'll be good to go for the actual qualifiers for the Euros, I would imagine, when it comes to England. Like, we've all seen this coming. It is interesting that Gareth Southgate has taken it as his pet project to go and actually get after Declan Rice. It just shows how highly he's viewed over there and the potential with which they see him over at St George's Park and not just here in Abbottstown.
You think about, like, he's sitting at home, not on any international duty, just watching the games back to back, and it's like England's amazing performance against Spain, or any of the Ireland games, any 5 minutes of the Ireland match, any clip on Twitter or social media, he seems like, I'm just going to go over here and hang out with my new friends.
The connection that the England team seems to have with its fans at the moment, with the press at the moment, how loved the manager seems to be at the moment. And you go to the home of the Spaniards, a place in Sevilla where they do not lose.
No.
And have never been in a position where they're losing games. I remember going all the way back to the qualifiers for World Cup 90. We went to Sevilla and drew 0-0, and it was heralded as the most unbelievable result because Spain, when they play in Seville, never lose. And I was actually commentating on the Tottenham PSV game last week. Erik Dyer was playing for Tottenham. He's the guy I most associate with being the fall guy to a Declan Rice inclusion in any England team. And there's no comparison between the two of them already, I'm talking. I'm not talking about Declan Rice when he's Erik Dyer's age, because there's a 5-year gap between them. I'm talking now. I would have Declan Rice in my team ahead of Erik Dyer every time.
What about that tackle against Sergio Ramos? The Erik Dyer marker that he laid down, which, despite the fact that they beat Spain and they scored 3 goals, the fact that the tackle was the most memorable thing for that game says a lot.
I'm not saying it makes Erik Dyer any less of a player than he currently is, and he does bring certain qualities, but there's no reason why Declan Rice couldn't smash into Sergio Ramos, lay down a very similar marker if necessary. Look, we're talking about it because it's in the papers this morning, but we know in our heart of hearts, and everybody associated with Irish football, they know that this is a done deal.
Yeah, so, and it has been since the first time it got mooted.
Yeah.
You don't go public with the "I'm not in love with you anymore" story unless it's over, and this is just a long, slow, steady death by 1,000 cuts that was utterly predictable. It was the qualifiers for 92 that we drew 0-0 with.
92, was it?
They hammered us 2-0, like it was a proper 2-0 run around in the World Cup qualifiers for 1990. We recovered from that. Didn't recover from.
No, it couldn't be 92. They weren't in our group in 92.
For the qualifiers.
That group we had England, Poland, Turkey. No,
Spain 0, Republic of Ireland 0, World Cup qualifier 18th of November 92. Sorry, for the 94 World Cup.
94 World Cup.
Yeah, but it was in 1992. Good point. Okay, so the next point we're going to talk about is Joe Schmidt's next move. Gordon Darcy's piece today. He's kind of asking, are we a one-man system? Are we a one-man process here?
Or we're a one-system process, maybe? That is the system more important than the actual head coach in charge? That's not what he's asking, but that's what I'm taking from it, that if you just took somebody who was as regimented as Joe Schmidt and put him into a system that Joe Schmidt's already set up, how successful would Ireland be? And I think it's a valid question. But the fact of the matter is Joe Schmidt's an outstanding coach, and there's obviously going to be some sort of drop-off.
It feels like there's a tug-of-war going on at the moment that... I don't know if a decision's been made. I don't know if Schmidt's made up his mind that he definitely, this is it now, there's a limit here and there's going to be an automatic move to the Southern Hemisphere. I think that, like, there's definite attractions to being the single most important person in Irish rugby history. And Brendan Fanny's piece of the weekend saying, the mood music points in one direction only, and that's like going back to New Zealand. I don't really... I mean, he has obviously way better rugby sources than most people in the world, but I can't see that. I don't see that publicly yet.
Yeah. The mood music that Brendan Fanning is listening to, as you say, is probably very different to the mood music that we're listening to. I haven't heard any of those melodies, but when Gordon Darcy talks about the assist of the Irish system, like, there's two systems. One is the Irish rugby system, which has really got very little to do with Joe Schmidt. After he's gone, that system will continue to churn out the superstar potential that it currently is. And if anything, you would hope, and Darcy mentioned this in his piece, that Connacht, Ulster and Munster will move on down the road, and that will actually make Irish rugby even stronger, that they will eventually get somewhere close to the level that Leinster are currently at in terms of that conveyor belt of talent that's in chain at the moment. Then the other system is the Irish 15 that play under Joe Schmidt whenever a team is picked. And we'll only know how important he is to that system when he's gone. There's no way really to put your finger on the impact of a Joe Schmidtless Irish setup when it comes to us winning matches.
Unless you look at Leinster with Joe Schmidt and Leinster with Matt O'Connor and go, ooh, if you screw it up, if you get the decision wrong, then the fall off is precipitous. But it is possible to make a recovery. That, you know, so
there needs to be succession planning.
Well, it looks like Andy Farrell is the natural successor at the moment.
Or Stuart Lancaster.
Yeah.
Which, I don't want to be too disrespectful to Matt O'Connor, because he did win a Pro 12 and did get them to a Heineken Cup semi-final, and they were only beaten by the width of a post when Jimmy Goppert missed a drop goal in Toulon, or away to Toulon. It was in the south of France. I think it was Marseille. So he wasn't a million miles away from achieving great things at Leinster. But yes, when you compare him and his CV to Joe Schmidt or to Stuart Lancaster, there is a difference. I think the impact of Schmidt leaving Ireland in comparison to when Schmidt left Leinster would be less keenly felt. Because
Lancaster's in the system.
There are pieces in place that weren't in place back then. You're also talking about a Leinster minus Johnny Sexton, which would not be the case in this situation when it comes to Ireland. And you're also talking about that time in Irish rugby and European rugby. It was in a state of flux. the Heineken Cup was about to be dismantled and it was about to be replaced by what it is now. And the English and French clubs were just entering this period of domination, Toulon in particular, where they had assembled all of their Galacticos. They were just all at the right age, whereas we've seen how much they've dropped off now that all these guys have either stepped away or are still there but are well past their best. I think the landscape is very different now to compare it to what it was when Schmidt walked away from Leinster. So I would hope that if he was to choose to leave after Japan, that we would be in a position to survive it
and do as well as we're doing.
Well, look, who knows? Who knows? It's hard to see us doing as well immediately, because how do you follow that? Particularly if it's on the back of a World Cup semi-final, a final, or a world title. Like, how do you follow that?
It's very unlikely it's going to be a world title, right? Like it's
unlikely, but it's
the most likely outcome.
We're the best positioned that we've ever been.
We're always
in
the best position we've ever been.
We really are now. And look, the personal situation that Joe Schmidt is in as well. Like, maybe Brendan would have more of an insight to that than we do, but we know that he's happy in Ireland. We know that his family is happy in Ireland, and that is something that he will have to think long and hard about. Do you up sticks? Are you ever going to professionally have the setup that you have available to you now, that you can just pick up the phone to any one of the 4 head coaches that essentially come under your remit and say, I don't want him to play next week, or if he is playing, I want him to have this number shirt on his back?
Yeah, the only other job in the world you can do that in is the All Blacks job, where it's kind of everybody understands where the top of the tree is.
I was talking to a New Zealander at the weekend, he's a producer in rugby at the weekend, and he said that Schmidt wouldn't even be in their top 2 at the moment.
Who is the top 2?
I can't remember.
The Crusaders.
I can't remember the names that he gave.
He's got to bide his time down there. He's got service
but
time.
they are head coaches in Super Rugby at the moment, the 2 guys that he was talking about. But Gatland and Schmidt aren't in the top 2, according to him, at least.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on to try and, he needs to want us.
Well, there seems to be a feeling that he needs to spend time in Super Rugby before he's just automatically given the All Blacks job.
I mean, yeah, because he can't watch tape. He can't watch, that guy's good, that guy's good, that guy's also good, that guy's not so good. He can't do that from watching tape.
Do you want to be the guy that follows the 3 in a row as well?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Probably do.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. I think that the Ireland job is a perfect situation of a perfect confluence of power, access, control of players, and opportunity on a personal level. I think it's like this perfect situation.
But what's the opportunity on a personal level? What's the end game of that opportunity? Like, I would have always thought that the All Blacks coach was the end game.
But maybe it's not. Maybe we view this in a way that other people don't. Like the constant criticism that he would receive from
being criticised quite a bit at certainly early days in Ireland.
Almost none compared to the level of criticism he would face on a daily basis.
We're talking like the Real Madrid manager. We're talking the England manager in the darkest days.
Yeah.
That's the level of scrutiny you're under.
And people still want those jobs.
Yeah, but they're all getting paid like 14 million a year. Like, that's not what it'll be a pay cut to go home as well. So the second tier, I think the marketing around this is not great. So what's this Broderick second tier story?
Well, Paul Broderick doesn't like the idea of it because there has been, I don't want to say a lot of support for it over the last couple of weeks, but there's certainly been a clamour to try and move things in a direction where we're actually starting to say to ourselves, actually, people want this to happen. When initially it seemed that people didn't want this to happen. So he was asked, he's around the papers this morning, I'm just going to read from the Mirror. He says,
explain who he is.
Paul Broderick, Carlow, corner forward, nominated for an All-Star. If you ask me, would I like to play in a second tier championship, the answer would be no. But if you ask me, do I think we're going to win the All-Ireland in the A, the answer is no as well. I know it's one in 65 years, but what the likes of Carlow beating Kildare has done for Carlow football, we mightn't reap the awards of what that has done if things change. The best guiding light, he says, for people is probably experience, and having experienced the very bottom rung of Division 4 and losing heavily to teams for years, there's no experience like that to let you know where you are. He says it feels like you're maybe being ushered off to make way for those greater teams on the greater stage. Takes away that chance that day that we had against Kildare. But yeah, you're right in that one. So it is the sort of conflict between the one-off miracle that you can get from everybody being in the one championship. Like, I don't want to call Carlow beating Kildare a miracle because it wasn't a miracle. It was a surprise.
It was a miracle.
It was like they'd just been promoted for the first time in 33 years. This was the best Carlow team in decades, so it wasn't an overly big shock.
Kildare had like 15 wides and missed a penalty.
Yeah.
Still nearly.
Carlo didn't kick a single wide.
And still nearly.
Even that in
got back
itself
into the
is
game.
miraculous.
Come on.
I was at that game. Carlo were the better team. They deserved to win that game, without question.
On the day, but they're not the better team.
No, but I did say it's a surprise. It wasn't like a massive miracle. But anyway, the idea that this, it is, as I say, that conflict between these results that are unusual and results that are more usual, because that's what you're going to get with a two-tier championship. And he says it's small-minded thinking that the proposal is it would be good to bring in a two-tier championship, which goes against, obviously, the GPA's findings last week that 60% of people would support a tier championship.
There is a mechanism by which teams like Carlo can still have their crack off Kildare and then take part in a
Wicklow's proposal was
championship.
that.
Exactly. So I don't think the likes of Paul Broderick is correct in saying that we'll just never get an opportunity to experience those kind of highs again. And the other part of it is that I said it on the show with Owen and Adrian last Friday. I don't think the current players are the players that need to be asked about this.
No, it's the 12 and 14-year-olds and 16-year-olds who are going to ruin their lives trying to play football for a county that's going
there's no way
never
a
give
current
an
Carlow
opportunity.
footballer or a current Leitrim footballer or Wicklow footballer is going to opt for a B championship. But maybe the Wicklow footballers in 10 years' time might fancy it.
And here's the thing, it shouldn't be, I think that mechanism where everybody starts and then you get spat out into the crappy stuff, like you have to start and earn the right to be in the good one, and which is how all sport works.
And the other, like he says, it feels like we're just going to be ushered off to make way for the big dogs. But Carlow, essentially, they were ushered off the stage by the end of June. And then the big dogs take over and the Super 8s kick in. So why not be playing football in June, July and August and playing a final in Croke Park on the 2nd of September?
Kieran Cunningham's asked an interesting question on Twitter this morning. Good morning to you, Kieran. How are you? Who was the last English-born player to declare for Ireland that would have played for England? It's been quite a while. England don't let Lawrensons or Townsends go anymore.
It's a good question.
Like, I can't recall a guy that England would have been clamouring for.
Who at some point would have been capped?
Like, would Kilban have been capped at some stage?
Yeah, I think probably.
And he was called up to the 21s.
Yeah.
You look at the great players we had in the 80s, like would Johnny Aldridge eventually have capped by England?
Top scorer. Absolutely.
They didn't take Gary Lineker out of that squad, and they didn't really have an outstanding 9.
Yeah, so he's definitely in squads.
I think he's definitely contender for this discussion. Anyway.
But after that, like the next generation, so who in that World Cup team? Somebody saying Gary Breen have got in around that World Cup time. I mean,
well, he was linked with
Inter Milan.
He was.
But, so that was after the World Cup in 2002. Who did they have? They had Saul Campbell.
They had Campbell. They had Rio Ferdinand coming through. John Terry coming through.
Oh.
I don't think so.
We
love you, Gary, but I'm not sure you were going to get ahead of one of those three and into the England 11 under Sven-Göran Eriksson.
Probably gets a cap along the way.
Oh yeah, caps. But then his international career is ruined.
Has 10, 12 games as a sub or whatever, and like in those November international window where there's no where players are not showing up. Who else in that team that was English born
in 02?
Yeah,
Matt Holland. I don't think Matt would have got into an England team. Like, again, maybe capped. I mean, you look at some of the guys who were capped in friendlies under Eriksson. Any of those guys we mentioned are as good, if not better, than those sort of fellas. But would they have had an England career? Per se, I don't think so.
I hate to make a Jack Grealish comparison, but I wonder what he thinks of this idea that Gareth Southgate clearly sees Declan Rice as some sort of pet project now, where it's like, I could develop into a better player than Declan Rice. Of course, different positions. We're not comparing
I think that Jack Grealish, I think the character of Declan Rice is like future England captain. I think the character of Jack Grealish is I'm going to be in a reality TV show in about 5 years.
He's helped by the fact, though, that he's come in during the Southgate era, whereas Grealish made his decision during the Hodgson era, where there was less of a sort of
which should get him like far more brownie points. Like, when you were shit, I declared for you. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so our final few talking points here that we're going to rattle through before we get to some of our best ofs. Geraint Thomas versus Froome Dog.
Just a quick hit on this. He's got a book out. He's done an interview with Donald McRae this morning, and he talks about his relationship with Chris Froome during the tour. Of course, there was no rivalry between him in the tour. Once he got ahead, Froome was happy to support him, or so he thought. He says that before the team time trial, which happened on the third last day, he was told he would be left by the other riders if he endured a puncture or a crash Only Froome, trailing Thomas by 52 seconds after 2 stages, would be protected. Oh, sorry, this was early in the Tour. Thomas sat there and stewed before saying, "That's a bit shit. Effing hell, guys. Can you really not wait for me?" Which just obviously shows the favouritism towards Chris Froome. This is a bizarre one. He says, after the cobbles in Roubaix, they got to the hotel and it was really hot in the hotel. But when they put the aircon units on for all 8 riders, the electricity tripped. So they said, only one person can have it. Who do you think got the aircon?
Geraint Thomas?
Nah, Chris Froome. Yeah, it's there's a couple of other things in it as well, saying that Arsene Wenger phoned him to congratulate him, and Thierry Henry sent him a video message to congratulate him as well. And he's met Lionel Messi in the last couple of months, so he's rubbing shoulders with the best in the football world as well. But one final story we wanted to touch on is an incredible story which Martin Ziegler's kind of done up a piece around in the Times Ireland edition this morning, and it is South African school rugby suffering rise in steroid use. So increasing positive tests for boys between 16 and 18, a big problem, says Ziegler. So basically the story here is that anti-doping chiefs in South Africa have expressed alarm at evidence that coaches and parents are complicit in what appears to be the growing use of anabolic steroids by schoolboy rugby players. So there was drug tests done at this year's Craven Week, which is kind of like the combine for South African rugby. The national media is watching. There's kids, teenagers who are about to make it big. There's a lot on the line here. Basically, we often have this conversation about why wouldn't you dope when there's a huge incentive. Well, in Craven Week, there is a huge incentive. So there were 6 positive findings for steroids. Each of the players had taken a cocktail of banned drugs, and some of them had been injected by their parents. There is also evidence that drug taking by boys hoping to make it as professional begins when they're as young as 14 years of age. The chief executive of the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport has been speaking about it and said, in one case, a boy's mother wrote an affidavit saying she injected the kid with ampules as she thought it was vitamin D. He also makes a very valid point here that it's the stupid doper that gets caught during Craven Week. So 6 people got caught during this week, 6 people who doped stupidly. So this is basically just scratching the surface on what actually goes on during this week. The tests showed that the teenagers had all taken several different anabolic products such as nandrolone and testosterone, and in some cases had taken the breast cancer drug tamoxifen to counteract the side effects of steroids, which includes the development of breasts. And as I say there, it's a big event that's broadcast live. There's plenty of incentive to do it. 6 of them got popped this year, but the fact that the parents are involved is grim.
So this is what Philip Brown was talking about when he was talking about the different culture that Brant Grobler had come from, when he was talking about, like that's not something that we need to worry about in Irish rugby because that's a different culture. I presume that's what he's talking about, because this culture is rotten and we need to stop signing players from South Africa.
That was the point I was going to make. There needs to be a review done of the Irish rugby policy of bringing South Africans into our games, because yes, the guy you bring in could be clean, but was he clean when he was 18? Was he clean when he was 16? It's like that is rotten to the core, that you've got parents involved in the doping of their own sons.
That's pretty grim.